Shalom, salam. My name is Yuri, and I've been doing recently a series of quick introductory episodes going over, you know, the major Abrahamic religions in Latin America and the Latino community, right? If y'all seen it, right? What's gonna make this a little tricky is since Islam and Christianity, right? I tried to do the Christianity one. I don't think I gave it enough justice since it's a large community. I don't think I'll be able to do the same thing to Islam. And honestly, the same thing would be towards Judaism, right? What I mean about this, right, is should I start with the early Umayyad period, right? Since the Umayyad Caliphate made it all the way to Spain and later became Al Andalus. It also created the Emirate of Cordoba. I guess I'll start from there, right? And before that, I'd like to thank Hakan Joe and Rav Ben Abrahamson, who've been gracious enough to teach some of this, right? I'll put their links in the description and the sources that they may have given me, or they definitely given me, right? This has definitely been a very, very difficult episode to make, uh, simply because I've been all over the place, right? And I haven't had time to be on the internet as I normally am in a more normal manner, right? Sometimes I just have background music and I've been focusing on my studies. But here goes the soil. And it's going to be a little tricky the way I'm going to explain it because I'm going to. Oh, and I'll also like to thank. I forgot the name. It's a Shia cleric, right? Since there's very, very little resources of Islam, right? Is a Shia cleric and the largest Hispanic community in Latin America. I think, besides the indigenous, would be in Texas, right? I am surprised, but and fun fact, right? I think that the first Hispanic or Latino presence in the Americas was via the Caribbean, via the slave trade. And one that would have been a little bit more documented would be Estebanico, who would have been a companion of Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, who I may have mentioned in the Jewish episode, but it's a little trickier, right? Since, as we know, right, Islam in what would later become Umayyad Spain is a little, it's littered a little harder to pinpoint than I would have normally like to explain. And sometimes it's a little eh, difficult to tell the difference apart where Islam, Christianity, and or Judaism begins. The important thing here, right? Estebanico uh, be, was one of the earliest explorers of what would be Texas and later New Mexico, right? I'm going over people, but I haven't gone over what it is, right? So when we have the Umayyads in Spain, right? The Umayyads would be the second caliphate that comes out of the out of Islam, right? They are the successors of this empire. They go out all the way into Spain, and when they're there, right, it's primarily the Arabs and some Amazigh tribes that are there. But when they intermingle with Spanish nobility, they create a group known as the Mualadi, which is the more important group that it needs to get talked about when Latino or Hispanic Muslims get referenced in early Islam, since a lot of what the modern Muslim apologists and tactics do is explain, oh yeah, there were Muslims in Spain. Of course there were, right? But majority were descendants of Arab nobility. Not all of them. I've tried to look into my family history, and I don't know if it's true since it's a little difficult to verify these documents. But apparently, right, the Musa Banu Qasi would be one of these people in my family tree. Apparently, it's hard to verify, especially since the Banu Qasi would be an example of the Mualadi, right? The Banu Qasi were said to be direct descendants of Roman senators, which most likely they weren't, but they were. Perhaps it would have been minor nobles, minor nobility in that area, and Musa Banu Qasi would be the last of them, whose mother and half brother, right? His half brother would have been king of Asturias or some other kingdom in what will become modern day Spain. I have no way to verify this. I wasn't there, but documentation may point into that, right? One important thing to know about the Mualadi and later the rest of the Umayyads is that they were very, very open with intermarriage amongst other groups with women, right? Usually, if y'all know what standard Islam looks like, right? Islam does not permit today women to marry non-Muslim men, but it seems that Umayyad Spain was the exception, or what's an exception to this rule, right? Nothing bad, nothing good, right? It is what it is. The majority of it was political. Now, what exactly changes with mainstream modern day Islam within Hispanic Latino community and back then, right? Well, we do know that they were highly educated, highly literary people, and what happens is, right, they have, I think I've already talked about Alhamyado, which I already may have pinpointed. It's just Spanish and Arabic Kufic script, or I may be wrong with the script. It might be a different script. It's probably a different script. I need to go back. It's so much information, and I'm not doing justice. Right. Many of them were, of course, descendants of nobility, and as we know, right, in later historical sources, we know that a lot of Sephardic Jews became nobility, and they had to go through a limpieza de sangre, or which to prove, like, oh yeah, you're no longer Jewish, you're a Christian. So it's very likely that all of these three religions have had some form of cross-pollination. I can't exactly call it syncretism, since the position I hold regarding Islam is that of the Islamic revisionist narrative, where I see Islam as coming out of Syriac Christianity and also adopting different points of views along the way that may have been Manichaean, traditional rabbinic Judaism, or other Christian points of views. It's not an easy position to hold, but it's not unlikely either, right? So today, right, Islam primarily targets or Hispanic, Latino Muslims, with the exception of those that are, multicultural, right? Since a lot of Palestinians, Lebanese, Pakistanis slash Indian migrants have intermarried with Latino communities. You've seen some sort of socioeconomic disparity between those that are multicultural versus those that are solemnly Hispanic or Latino, right? Whose ancestors have had, indigenous roots or mestizo roots, right? I've visited the largest Hispanic Latino mosque in the United States, which will tend to be in Texas. It's a fun place to look at. It has I believe that the one in Houston has updated it since the last time I visited. It looks now to be a replica of the Cathedral Mosque of Cordoba, right? Um, and I would like to visit the Dallas one, right, to see how it is. But from what I have seen, right, it seems that they primarily target or do dawah towards people that may need it the most, right? Not exactly Christians, not exactly frivolous people, but people in the area that may be socioeconomically despaired or may have not studied their Christian theology pretty well and may find Islam beneficial to them. And this a more easier pill to swallow if people are not delving deep into it, right? Since the very basic of Islam is Tawheed, and its creed that goes as La ilaha Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Which, to be fair, it was not the first Shahada, but there has been many other Shahadas. This is the final Shahada that has been composed. Now, talking a little bit of what happened in there, it is a little hit or miss. But a definite person that we can definitely talk about who was influential that came from Islamic Spain has been Ibn Arabi. We usually tend to see other people as being influential from there, but Ibn Arabi and his view of Waqdar al-Wujud, which we could call pantheism, in reality could be panentheism, right? Which has influenced not only Sufi tariqas, but other religious people, other religious schools of thought. We could probably even guess that it may have influenced Christians, like Meister Eckhart, or maybe he have, or vice versa, right? We also have the Ibn Sina, as in the Latin term is called Avicenna, and we know that via Thomas Aquinas' view of natural law, St. Thomas Aquinas' views of natural law, right? He is sometimes rebuting against other Christian monks and priests who hold Ibn Sina's original view of natural law to a higher regard, right? And it's a little complex. We can see that Muslim Spain, from what we can see as in theory, would have been very more open and diverse than what Islam is today, I guess we could give it a modern day equivalent as to American Islam, right? Since in the United States, American Islam has needed to adapt in a very more clearly invisible, unique way that no other, that the only other community that has done something similar has been the Jewish community and the radical reform Christians, right? So this would include communities like Mennonite, like Bruderhofer Mennonites, right? Of course, some have maintained traditional roots or more conservative roots, right? As any other community would try to maintain, nor others have adapted way too much, right? To the point that you can't tell which group is which. Of course, I mentioned primarily those in the United States, and I know in Mexico there's very, very little Muslims, but it has a unique thing. I near what near my hometown, not my hometown, but my family's ancestral hometown in Mexico, right? There is the largest Shia masjid, right, near the hometown. We're not from that area. We're from, it doesn't matter, but it's large. Since what tends to dominate in the West would be, of course, Sunni Islam, and as I mentioned, it may have alluded to, right, Sufi tariqas, right. I've had the pleasure of visiting the Nimatulahi order, which today in the United States, it's very eclectic. It's open to everybody, and it doesn't claim to be Muslim per se. And it has a very more clinical, I wouldn't call it clinical, but a very, very psychological approach to it. Like, detach yourself from here and now um, so your mind can reset. It kind of just sounds like modern meditation practices in an Islamic sense, in a very ironic Islamic sense. And it's a very, very diverse group, right? Besides Latinos in there, right? This could also be people from Russia, China, right? So, like I said, I'm barely scratching the surface. And I would like to stretch the surface. I would like to delve deeper in the Spanish video, a little bit deeper, since I'm gonna post to edit. I think I'll put the resources in the bottom of where to find more information, so y'all can look for it yourselves. Since Islam isn't just Shahada, right? There's more. Some forms of Islam can be quite Trinitarian with Haq, Muhammad, and Ali, or such as Balkan Islam. But thank you for watching this quick video. It's been a very, very tough episode to make because I did not know where to start. I wanted to make a deep dive, but I think I'll just piece it section by section.